is running really seamlessly and smooth, you can imagine the chaos backstage. Like they're throwing their clothes off, but these could be $5,000 dresses, so it has to be done kind of organized chaos. But make it look like it's flawless on the outside, on the runway. Backstage as well, we set up hair stations, makeup stations. We use high stools for makeup so that the artists can work looking directly at their faces. We use paper on the tables to make cleanup very easy. And one really important thing backstage is enough power. You need to have enough lighting so they can actually see and make sure the looks of the models is what it's supposed to look like, but also that there's enough power for hair dryers, curling irons. If there's not, we'll just be blowing circuits and then you start to run out of time. So that would be the worst. Everything needs to be ready on time for rehearsals and then for the show. And then finally, we set up separate accessories tables down to the purses and the rings and the shoes. So moving on to technical production, in my mind, this is probably the most important area after models. Getting the lighting right. If you realize that photos and videos are what's going to leave and ultimately market the clothes later, you really get one chance to get it right. So making sure the lighting is nice and even, there's minimal shadows, there's depth and dimension, and I'll show you some further light. Some of the videos that were shown to you earlier actually have some really good examples of large lighting rigs. In my mind, that really, without good lighting, then you can't see the clothes, and if you can't see the clothes, the marketing effort really is sort of the thing. Audio design. Audio is done a little bit differently. If you look in this room, you can see there's speakers that are projecting into the audience. In a runway, people are sitting facing each other, so the way that the audio is set up in the room is a bit different for a runway show. It needs to have even coverage, and the music itself needs to have a really good beat for the models to be able to walk the runway. Talking about scenery, there's the two basic things that need to be considered are the walls. So where the models enter and exit from is always going to be in the background of all the photo shots. And then the runway. And the runway could be as simple as walking on the floor, or there could be certain texture. Some of that depends on the creative vision of the designer. We'll look at some different examples of some really basic looks as well as some more designed looks. Video screens are an optional feature. In some cases, they actually replace the scenery, and it gives a chance for more decor and creative manifestation. I'll show you a few ground plans, which are really critical. It lays out where the audience is going to be sitting and where the stage is and where the runway goes. So we'll look at a couple of photos. So here on the left, this is again our large venue. It's called the Arc in the old post office. These lights here are what we call front light. They're providing light going to the front to light the front of the models, the front of the clothes. Up here, this is called backlight, and this provides an angled light to come from behind, and it creates a full shadow. It creates a full depth, a full dimension, so that the models don't look flat. It gives some additional shape to the clothes. You can see the rounding of the shoulders, maybe you can see the way a dress folds, and it really helps define some of the texture on the clothes. You've got beads, you've got lace, there's some very intricate things that you really want to be able to capture both into the audience as well as on the runway. And if you remember, this is the room that has the black floor. This is actually the floor surface, but the white light is so pure and so even that it looks like the floor actually is white. So a lot of times designers choose just to use the runway and actually define the surface of the runway just through lighting. It's very simple, it's very elegant. We'll see some more examples of that. The balance of lighting, it's a bit of a dance between lighting for the people in the audience who want to see it up close and lighting for the cameras. The camera and the human eye have a very different way of reading light. So it's a bit of a balance to please both. Here on the right, we've got A video, an LED, this is Gwen Stefani in one of her fashion shows from a few years ago, but this is an LED video wall behind her. She chose not to do any kind of wall scenery. This is actually a picture of her face, kind of stylistically. She had her video designed to complement the look of the collection for her creative vision that year. Moving on to show you a little bit more about lighting. Again, it's a plain black runway with the white light defining. We've got the evenly spaced lights above. And if you can see here, this is the audio. This is what I was mentioning is a bit different than your normal concert or speaking engagement from a stage. The audio is evenly spaced, running the full length of the runway and pointing this way. And then these speakers are pointing this way, so that you have kind of an even coverage. It's a different way to do audio than a lot of other traditional events, but it's the audio that provides the best coverage and really allows the people in the room and the models especially to feel the music. They really need to be able to feel that to walk on beat, to keep the pace going. Colored lights should really only be used when the audience is filling in the room or leaving the room. You really want the light just to stay fully white to really let the clothing come out and tell its story. That should really be the main focus. This is a flexible space, and what we've been seeing is because each designer has their own vision, they really want to have flexibility in their production choices to be able to tell their story how they want. So this is a raw white space. There's multiple walls here that can be configured to have models coming out of one entrance, or two entrances, or three entrances, with just a plain concrete floor, some bench seating, and then this is the same venue. This is a Derek Lamb show, and he didn't want just a plain white canvas, so he laid down a carpet with colors that complemented his clothes, a back wall that also complemented his clothes. He even brought in some custom benches. So this is that same runway as well. And this was Rebecca Minkoff this season. For the first time, she did one of these consumer shows. So she was actually showing her spring collection here to a consumer audience, which is the start of the new trend that I mentioned. And one other point I wanted to note here is the bench seating. As you can see where you're sitting, the rows are tiered, so the people in the back row are high and can sit down. We do the same. We try not to set more than 2 benches in a row on the same height, so that everybody can see the clothes equally well, since that's the reason they're there. There's some other interesting ways to do runways and different creative. Here's a runway we built over a pool, in Miami for Miami swim shows that happen in July. And this is that same white venue I just showed you. The designer put up, I think it was something like 1,000 tulips hanging upside down to accent some of the more floral feel of his collection. So it's really open to the designer and what story they want to tell. These are a couple seating charts. We're going to look at the actual shows that these are accompanying. On the left here, this is a designer called Monique Lullier. This is tiered seating in the larger arc venue. There's space here for a jib camera, which gives some additional camera angles. It's the kind of camera that sweeps around and gets some interesting shots. This is about 100-foot long runway, so the models will walk straight and back. This is where the press, all the photographers go, and these are also on tiered levels so that all of the lenses can get a good shot of what's happening on the runway. On this side, this is a designer called Angel Sanchez, and this is the venue we looked at. The walls are flexible, they can be moved, so the models will come out in the middle, walk around, up, over, here, down, up, and out. This is a 300-foot model walk. It's very long, but it gives flexibility for the most people to see. So your buyers, your most important consumers and customers that are going to buy the clothes would sit in the front row. So the more people you have in the front row, the more access to your product that you have. And then finally, logistics-wise, we do what's called a one sheet where we put all the basic information so that the teams, when they're running quickly, can pull everything regarding the show, regarding the contact, technical information, any security details. So I'll show, this is the Monique Lullier show. She's got some interesting set pieces which pick up some of the colors on the collection. She actually has a fabric-covered white runway. You can see the black floor kind of cut out, and the audience you don't really see. So the focus really is on the center here. So you can see the timing of the models. They're spaced pretty well. There's about 4 models on the runway at any one time. And they really do a fast turn. A lot of media shots you think of, the models walk to the front, they smile, they pose and walk fast. Here it's pretty much all business. They pause briefly, so the photographers really get just one chance to get it right. They get one chance to snap that shot at the end of the runway. So this will be the end of the show. And you can really see the lighting, her dimension, and you can see the clothes well. She'll leave the stage, the lighting will disappear, and then she's actually going to run around backstage to get to the front of the line and do what they call the final model parade, where they all walk out, and the light will come back up, so you can really see the contrast of the dark and the light. And where the camera's shooting from right now is basically the center position on the media riser. Whoever's shooting for the designer is usually in that center spot. This is the jig camera that's taking some wider, more interesting shots. Depending on budget, designers will add that second camera just to give a little more interest and be able to see some different sides of the clothes. But this center shot really captures enough, especially for the still photos, or what the designers will need to market it. So a lot of these shots, designers will then turn into what we call their lookbooks, which is what they then turn out and market to buyers who may or may not have been actually invited to the show for wider distribution. You can see how some of the detail work really shows, especially in this collection with a lot of lace. And then the lighting fades out. Designers will sometimes come out and say a thank you, sometimes they don't. It depends on their personality. This designer will come out and just do a quick little wave, just to acknowledge her work. People allow this. I'll move on to the next one. So this is just 1 minute. This is the 300-foot model long, which is quite long. There's up to 6 models on the runway at any one time. And if you follow her in this full 1 minute, it's going to take for her to navigate around. There's about 6 models on stage, on the runway at any one time. And the show director, which we'll talk about next, it's really up to her to get the timing right of when the models actually come out, and then up to the models to make sure they're not walking into each other. It's happened a few times, which is never the best for longevity on camera after. This is another venue. I'm going to show you a time lapse at the end. We created a venue that can be really flexible here as well. It seats about 500 people, and it's got concrete walls, floors, benches that can move completely in and out. So let's talk a little bit about show direction. So now we've got the models, we've got the clothes, we've got the lighting, we've got the audio, we've got the set. Who brings it all together? So the actual show and bringing the models out, what time they come out, how they look on the runway. That's the responsibility of the show director. We typically show, I would say, maybe 80 to 90% of shows are runway shows, but sometimes there's presentations. So the difference is the runway show brings the clothing and the product to the audience, versus the presentations brings the audience to the close. So you've got the show director, someone in the backstage sending the models, and then somebody overseeing technical production, somebody managing the audience, somebody watching the lighting to make sure that it's even, that it's on cue, the DJ playing the music, and all of them need to talk to each other. If you imagine the music's going really, really loud, they need to be able to talk to each other via some two-way communication. Rehearsals are critical to get the timing for models as well as the technical cues right, and the music needs to be strong and with a good beat. So we've got a runway show here. The models are paced pretty well. This is a BCBG show. This is a presentation, and the look of this was kind of antique 1800 world traveler. So there's a lot of animal prints, and the designer wanted to go with a lot of lush fabrics and trees to really bring out the looks. Presentations, the models usually get posed in either different levels or in different facets to make it for more interesting than just models just lined up and standing in one place. It's important to have a control booth that's raised up high so that the show director and the lighting can actually have a good vantage point of the runway. The runway should be at least 6 feet wide, so there's enough room for models to pass each other. And this is the reason why we rehearse. They usually try to do a rehearsal in shoes. If a model's putting on 4-inch heels the first time they actually walk out on the runway, that is a recipe for disaster. Finally, we've got front of house logistics. So dealing with the audience and who's actually invited. We've got, like we saw before, we've got two rows per level ideally, and if we have anything deeper than that, we go to raised seating. You need a really good PR company. Your PR is going to ensure that you have the right people sitting in your audience. So they will coordinate a seating chart to make sure that your most important buyers and customers are sitting in the front, the closer rows, and they determine kind of the hierarchy of getting the people that you want into the building to see your show. A lot of venues have an opportunity for standing room, which achieves two purposes. One, if you invite an audience and there's some empty seats, you don't want that ever to really be shown on camera, so the people that have standing room often are invited to fill those seats, so your audience seating always appears very full. Photographers and press are pretty important. At New York Fashion Week, there's about 1,500 credentialed press. So there's also a hierarchy of photographers. Each designer has their outlets that they want to make sure are on their media riser as close to the center to get that perfect shot as possible. In terms of timing, I've decided that fashionably late was invented at New York Fashion Week. For a 6 p.m. show, it rarely starts before 6:30. We try to get what we say the house opened close to that top of the hour when the show is called for, because it does take a while to load 300 people, 500 people, 1,000 people in, get them settled, get all the seats filled. And then the front row in particular comes with a lot of celebrities, which comes with a lot of the photographers that actually stand on the runway that actually want to shoot who is sitting in the front row, which raises that brand awareness and cachet we talked about before. So at a certain point, security will come, they will actually clear the runway, they'll rope off each side of the media riser because you don't want anyone between your cameras and your runway. And then if there is an actual runway area, it's been covered for protection. You don't want a beautiful white runway to be ruined by everyone running all over it. So we pull the plastic off, and then the show director will start once everyone gives the okay. So they will start the show. There's also a lot of shows do have sponsors. It's not free to produce a fashion show. In New York, it could be anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 and up. So you want to make sure your sponsors are taken care of, especially VIP seating or maybe backstage access, a cocktail reception, something like this. So front of house. So this is the center runway shot. It's really the kind of prime shot. This is one of my favorite parts of Fashion Week. Is the press kit is a living, breathing thing. Everyone's trying to get to the center. To that marketing shot from the center of the runway, that's the one that you want. So they're all kind of climbing on each other to get there, and that's a whole piece of logistics. Just getting them in, getting them settled, and getting them ready so they're ready to go when the show's ready to go. This is a good vantage point on the left to show you what seating looks like up in the tier. You still get a really good view of the runway when the show's happening, even if you're 20 feet high up. And then you want, this is our Vogue US editor, Anna Wintour, for anyone who doesn't know. If she's sitting in your front row, even if you're an up-and-coming designer, it's kind of a stamp of approval. People track literally where she goes and what shows she's at, and that leads them to check out who's the new up-and-coming designer. So it's a good stamp of approval for any designer to have her in your front row. Seating charts, as we mentioned, these are literally names. I mean, each seat is really assigned, so you make sure you have your key buyers, key customers, key celebrities in the rows that they're supposed to be. And then having celebrities in those front rows certainly helps raise the cachet. I'm going to close with a time lapse of, this is the flexible venue I was talking about, concrete walls, concrete floor. You can see how the lighting changes, the seating configuration changes, and it really makes each show that I'm going to show you look a little bit different for each one. There's no audio with this, sorry. So because the runway floor here really is a kind of a faux concrete, most designers chose not to put a runway down. That one had just a square shape with people sitting around it. So we have a battalion of, I think, about 400 volunteers that work with us during Fashion Week and really are the backbone to help make it all happen. I think they learn a lot during the year, during the season, and you can see how they really get to participate in getting the setups right, getting the audience situated. They serve as our ushers. This is what we call chipping. That gets the white balance of the video cameras metered with the lighting that's in the room. So the dance between lighting for the room and lighting for the video, that metering board really helps. So this is another W-shaped runway. Here's the chaos of crew moving in and out. Everyone catches their breath. You can see some of the lighting color sort of here and there. That's usually between shows. Here's the flexible walls again. Now they're setting up for a band. So really, in the course of a day, 2 days, you imagine between, we do a show in here, I think every 3 hours. So we set up a band, we'll redo the lighting, maybe we they're putting up a logo here, a splash of color, some additional music. And it's just a constant activity. A lot of work goes into making these happen. And we see a lot of people through. We see, through the 4 venues that we produce, we see about 100,000 people come through over the course of the week.